Yo, what's going on, people? It's your boy Ape Huncho, back at you again with a throwback case. Now, if you guys have never seen a throwback case before, it's a series I created where we take an in-depth look at some trials that have happened in the past that normally surround UK drill rappers or rappers in general. So if you do have anyone that you want me to cover in a future throwback case, let me know down in the comment section below and I'll be sure to look into it. So today we'll be taking a look at Xeneral, who was a member of the 12World gang. 12World, for you guys who don't know, are located in Shepards Bush and was known for their main rivalry with CGM, formerly known as 1011, out of Ladbroke Grove. And if you remember 1011's song Play for the Pagans, you might even remember Digga D saying he's wearing Xeneral's trackie and Trap Goes Dead, he's a fucking bum. And this is in reference to allegedly Sav 12 wearing Xeneral's tracksuit in his song Trap Goes Dead. But again, Xeneral wasn't a rapper, but his story is very interesting and takes place over a period of about 4 years. So this all starts on the 8th of March 2017, where the capital had started to see a rise in a new type of attack that involved acid. I'm pretty sure a lot of you watching this video would have heard about the acid attack issue we were having here in the UK, especially in London, and we're seeing the devastating effects that it was having on people. It's not so much an issue now, but again around that time it was becoming really bad. Well, one person who took it upon himself to use acid in attacks was in fact Xeneral, and on the 8th of March 2017 he had gotten into an argument with a man, but it's unknown why the argument had started out. Out of nowhere though, Xeneral would pull out a bottle of acid and attempted to throw it at the man. Unfortunately for passerby Nita Vader, after being in the wrong place at the wrong time, the acid would splash over her and she was now doused in acid. She would go on to say that initially she thought she'd been hit by a hot coffee, but soon realised it was something more serious after she felt a burning sensation on her hands and feet. Nita had walked away from the attack with burns to her hands and feet, and an investigation was opened to try and catch the acid attacker, aka Xeneral. A Metropolitan Police Detective Constable was assigned to the case and obtained images of the attack the day after, on the 9th of March 2017. The crime report had been updated to say that images of the attacker was going to be circulated via an internal database the next time the detective was on duty. But if you didn't guess it by now, pictures weren't circulated until the 8th of November 2018, and because of this it would end up proving fatal for 47-year-old dementia carer Joanne Rand on the 3rd of June 2017. The only thing we know after this first attack though is that in the following month, Xeneral would himself become a victim of an acid attack. According to reports that came out years later, a gang source told the Sun newspaper Xeneral was well known for rolling around the estate with his Mac-10 machine gun that became his thing. He was always in trouble and even battling with older gang members of 12World, which is how he got attacked with acid in the past. It was also believed that on the 19th of April 2017, he was stopped by police and was found in possession of a bottle of ammonia solution on Fulham Place Road in Hammersmith. Apart from this though, nothing else is reported and everything is fairly quiet up until the 3rd of June 2017, where we'd see a similar situation as to the acid attack we've already been over. On the 3rd of June 2017, Joanne Rand had been visiting her daughter's grave located in High Wycombe. Her daughter had died in a car crash. Joanne decided to head into the town centre to sit on a bench and smoke a cigarette, but it's unknown why she would make this journey. Either way though, the events that unfolded, like you've just seen, resulted in her eventually going on to die. But what exactly happened? At around 4:50 PM, CCTV footage captures Xeneral approaching a man by the name of Saqib Hussain who's on a bike and attempts to steal it. Xeneral claims he followed Saqib after he had sold him spice rather than cannabis. Then, as the confrontation continues, Xeneral produces an open-topped bottle of industrial-grade sulfuric acid from his bag. Xeneral is quoted as saying, "This is acid," and at that moment, Saqib panics and knocks the acid out of Xeneral's hand. Saqib then kicks the bottle of acid out of safety, but unfortunately, he had kicked it in the direction of Joanne Rand, who again had been sitting on the bench. Joanne would be splashed with acid, and from witness accounts, it's believed that she screamed in pain and ran to the nearby KFC to douse herself with water. Emergency services would arrive a short while later, and she was rushed to Stoke Mandeville Hospital for treatment of burns to her face, arms, upper body, and lower legs. She was initially treated for her burns, but one day later, she was actually released and was due to return to hospital 1 week later on the 10th of June 2017 for follow-up treatment for her burns and to speak to a specialist about receiving plastic surgery. 11 days later after the initial attack though, Joanne would contract septicemia due to the burns, which resulted in multiple organ failure, and she would go on to die due to the attack. Going back to the attack for a minute though, Xeneral's steps following it would see him stealing the bike. He puts on a balaclava, retrieves the bottle and cycles away. It's believed that he discarded the bottle and took a train back to his home in West London. And so an investigation was launched to try and find the person responsible for the death of Joanne, and the next we hear from reports would be on the 29th of June 2017, where Xeneral Webster, more known as Xeneral, would go on to be charged with 1 count of attempted grievous bodily harm. At further dates though, more charges would be added, which included murder, robbery, manslaughter, possession of an offensive weapon, namely a bottle of acid, and attempted GBH with intent, and this is in relation to the Joanne Rand situation. He would also go on to be charged with criminal damage, making threats to kill, and possession of an offensive weapon, namely a samurai sword, relating to a separate incident. This separate incident took place 9 days after the acid attack on Joanne. Here it's believed he made threats to kill and damaged a car with a samurai sword. He was also charged with possession of an offensive weapon in relation to when he was stopped by police when he was carrying that bottle of ammonia on the 19th of April 2017. In January of 2018, he would go on to deny all the charges that were brought against him in the case of the Joanne Rand acid attack, and so a trial was to go ahead in April of the same year. He did go on to plead guilty to criminal damage, making threats to kill, and possession of an offensive weapon, namely a samurai sword, which was in relation to that separate incident involving the damage to a car, and he also pled guilty to the offensive weapon charge in relation to him carrying the bottle of ammonia on the 19th of April 2017. So the trial went ahead, and basically what I've told you in regards to a timeline was told to the court. But before we continue, it should be noted that as the trial proceeded, Xeneral did go on to plead guilty to manslaughter and possession of an offensive weapon, namely the acid. The prosecution were happy with not going ahead with the other charges that were brought against him in relation to the Joanne Rand situation, and so a sentencing date was to be heard in June of 2018. After he pleaded guilty, the prosecution would go on to say Joanne Rand was not the intended victim of the attack. But the prosecution was brought on the basis that by producing an open bottle of acid and raising it to another man's face, Xeneral Webster intended to cause that individual really serious harm. The man fighting with Xeneral Webster acted reasonably in the circumstances by deflecting the bottle away. Xeneral Webster was responsible for the death of Joanne, and had he had not planned it to hurt the intended victim, Joanne would still be alive today. We know that nothing will bring Joanne back to her family and friends, but we hope today's conviction brings them at least a small sense that justice has been done. So the next report that comes out in regards to this whole situation would be on the 31st of July 2018. But a short while before then, on the 22nd of July 2018, while on remand at HMP Bullingdon awaiting the sentence for the killing of Joanne Rand and the other charges, it's believed that he carried out 2 assaults on prison staff. It's believed he hurled urine at prison officer Yvette Wright and also spat in the face of prison officer Zena Rose, and you guys need to remember this because it comes full circle as the story continues. But a few days later was the sentencing hearing for Xeneral, and in this hearing not much was reported on because the facts of the case were already reported on from previous trial reports. What is told though is that Xeneral had initially wrote a letter of apology for Joanne Rand's family, and he also wrote one for the judge, but when the judge handed him a 17-year prison sentence for the charges brought against him, it was here he went on to swear at Judge Angela Morris, and so after receiving that 17-year prison sentence, Xeneral became the first person to be jailed in the UK for killing someone via an acid attack. But this wouldn't be the last we heard of Xeneral, because around 7 months later, on the 22nd of February 2019, he would be in the news once again. This time he was in court in relation to when he was on remand and held urine at one prison officer and spat at another one. He went on to plead guilty to these offences, but since the original court date, the one in relation to the Joanne Rand situation, he had become a key suspect in the other acid attack, the one at the View Cinema which we spoke about at the start of the video. This had been noted in court and the prosecution were waiting for a decision on whether they were going to charge him for the View Cinema acid attack, and so the court hearing had to be adjourned. Eventually though, he would go on to be charged with the View Cinema acid attack, but went on to deny this, and so a trial was to go ahead. But what should be noted before we continue is that on the 29th of December 2018, he launched a third attack on prison officer Paul Flower, this time at HMYOI Aylesbury, and he would go on to be charged with this third assault on a prison officer. So to quickly round up for anyone who's a bit confused there, a second trial was to go ahead, this time over the View Cinema acid attack, but Xeneral would go on to plead guilty to all three prison officer attacks. At this second trial, not much is reported on, and the only thing that is reported on is what we've already spoken about, and just in case you forgot, on the 8th of March 2017, Xeneral had gotten into an argument with a man, but it's unknown why the argument had started out. Out of nowhere though, Xeneral would pull out a bottle of acid and attempted to throw it at the man. A passerby by the name of Nita Vader had been hit with the acid after being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and eventually because of this, she suffered burns to her hands and feet. The report from the second trial also talks more in depth about the third prison attack, the one that took place in December of 2018. On that day, Xeneral was due to go outside for recreation, but attempted to go back in his cell, which he was not permitted to do so. He climbed safety netting, and when apprehended by prison officer Paul Flower, a man aged in his 50s, he assaulted him, causing him to fall to the floor. Xeneral then launched a sustained and violent attack, jumping on his head with both feet and repeatedly kicking him to the upper body and head. The officer had suffered serious head and facial injuries and had to undergo multiple surgeries, including facial reconstruction. From the latest reports, it's unknown whether the officer would regain the sight in one eye, and he was unable to return to work. Eventually, after the trial though, Xeneral would go on to be found guilty and was to be sentenced in March of 2020 for the View acid attack, and on top of this, the 3 prison officer assaults. But just like a reoccurring theme, Xeneral, while awaiting a sentencing date for those 4 offences, would launch a prison attack at HMP Winchester. This time the news would come out to say that it was terror related. The reason that they say it was terror related is because when he had been jailed back in 2018 for the killing of Joanne Rand, it's believed he became radicalised in prison, and according to a report from the Times, he had tried to forge relationships with jihadi prisoners, although prison authorities would come out to say that that wasn't necessarily the case. In the early hours of the 13th of February 2020, it was heard that Xeneral had faked an attempt on his own life, which lured 3 prison officers into his cell, and then out of nowhere he lunged towards them with a sharpened weapon he had strapped to his arm. The prison service would come out to say that no one was injured in the attack and insisted that the incident wasn't being investigated as terror related. As it stands right now, there's no further information in regards to this attack and whether he's been charged with anything or whether the charges have been dropped against him. Either way though, in March he would turn up for his sentencing hearing in regards to the 4 offences from the second trial, And for this, he was sentenced to life with a minimum term of 14 years, on top of the 17-year prison sentence he had got from the first trial. And so the most recent update into what's going on with Xeneral would be in July of 2020, where he was at the Court of Appeals trying to appeal that 17-year prison sentence. His appeal was denied, and he was actually hit with a 56-day loss of time order, which basically means that his release date will be delayed because the time he spent in jail waiting for a decision on his appeal will not be counted as part of his sentence. And that is the Xeneral Throwback case. If you like this series, give the video a thumbs up. Let me know what you guys think of this down in the comment section below. If you do have anyone that you do want me to cover as well, again, let me know down in the comments. And if you want the latest drill, street and music news out of the UK, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. It's been your boy Huncho, and I'm out.